Deep in the dark forest, lost among the gloomy shadows, stood an abandoned cemetery. Its ancient graves, covered in the cobwebs of time, were out of sight, and the trees around them whispered in the wind, as if resurrecting the souls of the departed. Legend had it that the cemetery had been cursed since its founding. No one had visited it for centuries, and the earth had begun to consume everything around it like a blazing thirst for revenge. Two worlds merged in this place, the world of the living and the world of the dead. And the shadows born of this union roamed the cemetery like unknown souls seeking rest. One day, a young explorer named Edward decided to investigate the mysteries of this terrible place. He had heard many stories from the locals who claimed that at night he could hear the footsteps of those who had long since left this world. Despite the warnings, Edward set out with his camera to digitize the darkness. For the first few hours, everything seemed calm and serene. Edward fixed on old monuments and graves, immersing himself in the atmosphere of antiquity. As night fell, however, shadows began to appear around him. Quiet rustles became audible footsteps, and he felt that something dark and uncertain was following him. Vague figures began to loom out of the gloom, like ghosts striving to become visible again. Edward felt a chill run down his spine, and his heart pounded faster and faster. He decided to leave, but the farther he walked, the darker it got. Suddenly, a groan sounded from the depths of the cemetery. Edward stopped, startled, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. A moment later, a figure in a black dress appeared in front of him. It was a woman, her eyes glittering with a strange light. "Why did you come here?" she whispered, and her voice sounded like an echo from the past. Edward mumbled his intentions confusedly, but the woman suddenly began to approach slowly. The shadows around her grew denser and denser, as if absorbing the light around her. "You've upset the balance," her voice sounded, and suddenly she disappeared, as if swallowed by the darkness. Edward's heart raced with fear. He rushed for the exit, but the road seemed endless. Shadows flickered around him, making ominous sounds. Suddenly, he felt something pulling him down. The ground beneath his feet began to give out, and he found himself in a deep pit surrounded by coffins. Ghosts were rising from the graves, and their screams filled the air. Edward realized that he had become part of this cursed cemetery, and his soul was consumed by the darkness. Since then, it was said, anyone who dared to disturb the peace of the abandoned cemetery was doomed to wander between worlds, becoming a shadow of eternal darkness.